Get ready for another informative, educational, and inspirational story on one of the hottest podcasts in the world. Forget what your clock says and get comfortable. It's time for another edition of It's Primetime Somewhere with your host, J.D. Williams. Now let's meet today's guest.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of It's Primetime Somewhere. My name is J.D. Williams, and today I have the privilege of welcoming in my guest for today's show, and her name is Marianne Sciucco. And Marianne, I do want to welcome you to It Is Primetime Somewhere. How you doing?
Okay, Joel, I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me to the show.
Well, you are very, very welcome. I'm looking forward to this because it is an important topic that we're going to be covering today. But before we get into that topic, one thing that I always do, I do this with every guest, and you're not an exception, and that is just who the heck is Marianne? Just tell us whatever you want to tell us about yourself. You can tell us as little or as much as you want to. The floor is yours, ma'am.
All right, thank you. I am a registered nurse and an author, and I am a founder of AlzAuthors.com, which is the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience. And I did write a book about Alzheimer's, and I do have personal experience with this disease as well as professional.
Okay. Well, you mentioned the book, so I'm gonna put that up right away where everybody can get a look at it. And again, now I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce this word. The first time that I saw this word was when I was presented with this. Blue something. What in the heck is that second word? What is that?
Hydrangeas. Hydrangeas.
Okay. And
that's
what is that?
Blue flower. It's the pretty blue flower you see on the cover.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. I just had absolutely no idea what the heck that was. Mm-hmm. But now, this book, as I understand it now, you founded the organization itself along with two other ladies, if I read the information correctly. But
that's right.
This book is not like an autobiography or something like that. It's a fiction book, but it's a serious topic about the fiction book. Is that correct?
Exactly. It's a novel.
Okay. And can you tell us about that right off the top?
Sure. The novel is about a pair of retired Cape Cod innkeepers. So that's where the blue hydrangeas come in, because blue hydrangeas are abundant on Cape Cod, on the East Coast, mainly in coastal areas. And I wrote the book based on a couple I met in my work. At the time, I was a case manager working in a rehab in a hospital. And there was this lovely lady who came in who was about 86 years old. And she and her husband, they had driven down to Florida and come home after the winter with no problems, although she had Alzheimer's and he was very frail. But after she got home, she fell and fractured her pelvis. So that brought her into the rehab. Mm-hmm. And I happened to work with them because she was being released to a nursing home for further rehab. And the two of them were just captivating. She was very lovely and funny. And her husband, he was so devoted to her. I kind of took to them right away. And while I was speaking with them, their son was there. And the plan was for her son and husband to take her together to the facility where she was going. And he said to me, make sure that, my father doesn't leave here with her before I arrive. I said, that's fine. And I couldn't stop thinking about them after I left that night. I was wondering, what would happen to them if they took off and didn't wait for their son. Mm-hmm. Where would they go? What would they do, in this kind of a situation? And so that became the background for my story. So in my story, that's exactly what happens in the story. He agrees to send her to assisted living for a trial run because she needs some rehab, and leaves without the son. And when he brings her to the place and they're in the car looking at the place, and she kind of dawns on her what's happening. And she says to him, you're going to leave me here? And he can't do it. She's having a good day. He just says, Nope. He puts his car in drive and takes off and takes them on a ride to revisit their past and to reclaim their future. So they end up on a little road trip.
Okay.
Which causes a lot of stress and strain for everybody else involved because they go missing for the afternoon. Yeah. So, they're trying to triumph over. He's trying to triumph over the Alzheimer's, but
yeah, and that's almost impossible. I had a friend. I watched him deal with his wife going through the last maybe 2 or 3 years of it, and I won't say his last name, but I'll say his first, and he'll know I'm talking about him, and that's Chris. And Chris adored his wife. They'd been together since early college, and now she basically was not even the same person. And during COVID and being separated, he was not able even to go into the facility where she was. Every now and then they would bring her to a window where they could look at each other or whatever. I didn't think he was going to live after she passed. I really didn't think he was going to make it. He's bounced back, but that was rough. Now, you said that a lot of your work is with personal experience with Alzheimer's. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go into again to whatever detail that you wish to about your personal experiences there.
Sure. When I started my nursing career back in the early 1990s, I worked in a long-term care facility in a dementia unit. And what I discovered is that I really enjoyed working with that population. And I know some people, they don't, but I used to look forward to going to work, and I would stay if they needed people to stay. I would come in on my day off. I would come in early. I would do whatever. And I would think about them when I would not be there and wondering what was going on with the patients, and when I would go to work wondering, what's going to happen tonight and how is so-and-so doing and what are we going to do with them? And I was fortunate because I happened to work in a nursing home that was rich in resources. So we had a very low number of patients that we were responsible for. So I had a lot of time to spend with them and to do fun stuff. So I kind of took that with me when I went into nursing. I went to nursing school after that and worked in a hospital setting for many, many years, and always found myself, you always have, no matter where you're working in a hospital, you're always going to have somebody with dementia to care for. They're just everywhere. So I would work with the families at that point. I became a case manager, and I was responsible for helping families navigate after hospital care, whether the person would be going home and they would need support at home, like home care nursing or aides or anything like that, or if they needed to go into a facility, I would coordinate that and coordinate with their insurance company to make sure that their bills got paid, and did a lot of education. People don't always know what resources are available in their community. They don't know about hospice. They don't know about long-term care insurance, Medicaid, all of that. I mean, it's a huge task taking on this type of patient.
Well, anything with medicine right now, it gets complicated. I mean, from a personal standpoint, just going into Social Security. I mean, even that.
Tell me about it.
Even that's overwhelming, right? So I can only imagine what it's like for someone that has those challenges, and the families of those that have those challenges. Now, had you had any personal experience with your own family prior to beginning to work with Alzheimer's patients, or did that come at a later time?
No, actually, I did have 2 aunts, one on each side. I was very close to my mother's sister. She was 15 years older than my mom, so she was like our grandmother growing up, and we were very close. And she developed Alzheimer's, and I was involved in a lot in her care when she lived with my cousin. She lived with her family for a while, and then she ended up in a nursing facility. So at the time I started my nursing career, that's where she was, and I would visit there. And then after my book came out, and after I started AlzAuthors, my stepfather was diagnosed with dementia,
Okay.
and I was his person. I was his healthcare proxy, his power of attorney. I had all of that responsibility. So I ended up managing his situation, and that was hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's one thing when you're a nurse and you're helping other people because you
Right.
don't have the emotional baggage that goes with it. But then when
Right.
it's your own family member,
Right.
it's much more complex.
Right. It always is, no matter whatever the disease is, the illness is, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When it's close to home, there's a little bit different. Now, what motivated you? I'm gonna put the book cover back up on screen again here, and first of all, I don't want to just overlook this. Where can this book be purchased? Number one, if you give us the full title of the book, and then for the people that are just listening to this audio, I think it's important that they know the full title, and then where it can be purchased.
Okay, it's called Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's Love Story, and you can buy it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, any of the big booksellers online. You probably have to order it at a store. It's available in audiobook, ebook, and paperback. You can find it on audible.com if you like to listen. You can find it in the AlzAuthors bookstore, which would lead you to Amazon. And
that is your website, by the way.
Right.
If you can go ahead and give us the name of that website. I know it's AlzAuthors, but I want to make sure that you get it the way that you want to pronounce that.
Yeah. It's AlzAuthors.com, AlzAuthors.com.
Okay. And I did go to the Amazon site a few minutes ago, and I saw that you do have a paperback listed, you've got the audiobook listed, and you also have a Kindle listed on there as well. So just about every way that people would want to get that. Now, what prompted you to write a book? What was the inspiration for deciding, okay, I need to write a book about this?
Well, first of all, it was my dream since childhood to write a book, because I'm a big book lover, read all the time. And I would, dabble and write stories in notebooks and do things like that. And I was about, when I started this book, 2002, I was 40, 41, something like that. And it was on my mind that I wanted to write something. And I never got around to doing it. And then I had this near drowning incident while we were on vacation.
I got one of those. So, I got a story for that, but go ahead.
So once I was recovered from that, and that was in July 2002. 2001, I'm sorry. It was 2001, because the next thing that happened was 9/11. And I thought, if you're ever going to write a book, you better start doing it, because we don't know how much time we're going to be here. So I just said, I'm going to start writing this story. And I came up with a story about this ICU nurse who goes through a near-death experience and comes back and has this vision, has the gift of vision. She can see what's going on with people, clarity. And so I started on that, but it was just not working for me. And then I met those people at the hospital that really had an impact on me. Everything about them I loved. And so that just started the whole thing germinating. And I fleshed out all the details, the setting, the location, all of the whys and the storyline. And then I was like, I really wanted to write something that had to do with the male, the husband as a caregiver, because usually it's the woman that's always the caregiver, taking care of your mother, your kids, your husband. And so I knew a lot of men in particular that were excellent caregivers and very devoted, like the man that I met on that fateful day. And I just said, I'm going to try to tell their story and give them a little spotlight, because I don't think a lot of people think about that, men in that role. So that's kind of what motivated me. And if I knew at the time that it was going to be such a hard sell, I might have stuck with the other story about the clairvoyant nurse.
Well, how much time did it take you? I mean, I've heard people say, 3 months from the time I started till the time I sent the manuscript in, and other people say they struggle with it for years and years. How long did it take you to put together your book?
Well, it took me about 18 months till I had what I thought was a finished product.
Okay.
And then I started shopping it around and didn't get anywhere at all, period. I have a whole stack of rejection letters from people that never even read my book or saw a page of it. And that was hugely discouraging. And as the years went on, I just kept tweaking it and, trying to improve it and make it better. And I wrote some other things, and I had some other things published. But a friend of mine had published her first book on Kindle. The Kindle had just come out. So she said, why don't you try that? That might be okay. That might work for you. And I figured, I don't have anything to lose. I'll try that. And I published it on the Kindle, and right away I had people buying it and then writing reviews for it. And they were very positive, and people writing me emails, and people liked it. And I was, let the readers decide if they like the book or not. Right. So I had a lot of success with it in the first few years, but it was really hard to gain a lot of traction because it's such a hard subject. Right. Although the book isn't hard, the book is both, people say, beautiful and poignant at the same time. But, one of the most frequent words people use to describe it is beautiful. And whether or not you've had experience with the illness, you'll enjoy it and get something from it. So then I decided, I was in a group of authors who all worked to cross-promote each other in the what they call clean indie reads. So they were independent books, and they were clean. And a clean book, you might already know, is a book that has no foul language, graphic sex, bloody violence, anything like that. They're very, G-rated. Right. Which my book was. So I was with them, and I thought to myself one day, I said, gee, I wonder if I met up with some other authors who also had a book about Alzheimer's or dementia. Maybe we could all work together like this and see if we can, gain some traction for ourselves and build an audience. So I reached out to a woman that I had met online and presented her with this idea, and she was all for it. And she brought in another woman who also wanted to get involved, and there were two others. So at that point, there were 5 of us. Okay. And we were just going to do a 1-month promotional project of all of these books for June Alzheimer's Awareness Month in 2015. Okay. So the 3 of us really went gung-ho and worked really hard on it, and were in contact with each other and did what we were supposed to do. The other 2 people, not so much. So at the end, the 3 of us decided we would do it in November that year, because November is Caregiver Appreciation Month. Okay. So we did it again, and then the following year we kept in contact, and when it was time again, like in May, I said, you guys want to do this promo again for June? They say, yeah, but we decided, let's do something different. Let's start a blog. Okay. So we had our own blog, AlzAuthors.com, and we decided that instead of just featuring our own books, we were going to feature the books of other authors in this genre. And we solicited all these people to write a blog post for us about their book. And every day in the month of June, we published a new book, a new author. And at the end of the month, we still had more authors like waiting in the wings. We didn't know if we would even get, we wanted to do 20 posts, and we didn't know that we would get 20 authors. But we still had some more in the queue. So we said, well, why don't we just keep going? We'll do it once a week, not every day. That was crazy. But for once a week, we'll do a new author, a new book once a week, and we'll just see what happens. And we'll see, how long it goes on. Well, the next thing we know, now it's 2023, and we have over 350 authors. Oh, wow. And we have a robust website. We have the blog. We have a podcast. I do a podcast every other week now. I interview my authors. I have over 300 guests in my queue, which is, I know, crazy. But I have all these authors to interview, and we have the bookstore where people can go in and find the books, and they're all categorized. So depending on your situation or, what type of dementia you're looking at, you can find the books that pertain to that very easily. It's not like trying to search through the stacks at Amazon or Google or anything like that. If you're caring for your mother, there's like 80 something books about caring for your mother, and you'll find them all in one place, so you can kind of browse just through that section and not get sidetracked by other things that aren't relevant. So you don't waste time, because people who are caring for loved ones at home or with Alzheimer's, they don't have a lot of time to waste. And we do virtual events. We have one coming up. We're doing, we work with Kensington Senior Living, which is an across the nation chain of assisted living facilities. One of our authors, Laura Davis, is doing a writing workshop for caregivers. So that's on March 18th. That's coming up, and it's free.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's a blog post on our website, AlzAuthors.com. Your listeners can go and learn more about this workshop and sign up if they'd like. And then we're doing another one April 18th, which is called Poetry for the Dementia Journey. And we are inviting our poets. We have a whole selection of books on poetry in our collection, and their authors to come, and we're going to talk about poetry, and people are going to read their poetry, and people who participate are going to be invited to read their own poetry as well. And that got a huge response when we sent out the notice for that. And it's just overwhelming how many people were interested. So I think we struck a nerve with that one. So other things we have coming up for events, we're going to do something in May for caring for your mom, caring for a mother. And then on our YouTube channel, you'll find the replays of events that we've done in the past. So we did a beautiful one. It was called Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Dementia, But We're Afraid to Ask. And we have five people, authors, living with dementia there on a panel talking about it. And that was I don't want to ruin your train of thought there, but you did mention that you do have a YouTube channel. I do not have that information for the podcast right now. So if you've got an address for that, feel free to shoot that out there for people, and that way they can. I don't know the actual address, but if you go to YouTube and type in AlzAuthors, you'll find the channel.
Okay, that'll work.
And it's on our website too, I believe.
Yeah, YouTube is kind of weird with the way that they do those channel things. I know we had a bunch of letters and numbers and stuff for a long time until they finally gave us a actual deal.
Yeah, it is. Our thing is AlzAuthors YouTube. I don't know. I don't remember how exactly it goes.
Yeah.
But we have a number of videos up there where all of our panel discussions are uploaded. We do in the summertime, we do a book club with HFC, which used to be called Hilarity for Charity, and that is Seth Rogen and his wife, Laura Millen Rogen's charity for Alzheimer's caregivers. So we have all of those uploaded so people can watch the video if they miss. And we just did, the last one we did was called Dementia with Difficult People. Okay. And it wasn't about the people with dementia being difficult. It was about people who were called to care for someone, a parent, who had betrayed them or abused them in the past. Somebody with whom they did not have a good relationship with, or family members that were making things very difficult, because that's a common thing.
That is a horrific thing. Take advantage of somebody that when they're down, and they're still a human being. I don't get it. I don't get it. Now, people are seeing me look away, and I've explained that one to you earlier. And most of my viewers on the video platforms that uses understand what I'm doing is looking at my other computer over here. And what I did is I pulled up your website, and so people do need to go to AlzAuthors.com. That's AlzAuthors.com, and you're going to find a whole lot of things there. You got a blog, you got the podcast you mentioned, a bookstore, custom caregivers collections. We'll talk about that. Other helpful websites. So you're actually opening up this to where people can get even more information. A place where you can find resources all about you, of course, and a place to donate. That's really important, I think, to carry on the mission, because anytime you do any of this stuff, it costs money. People don't realize that you've got to spend a lot of money to get things out there. So I do encourage people to go to the website there and look through it, because it looks like you've got a whole bunch of different things. You did mention your podcast. And you said that it's up about once every couple of weeks. I wish I had a limited mind like that. Anyway, I'm going to put up on screen here the podcast for those of you that are watching this in visual form. For everybody else, I'll just let you talk about it. Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia, and AlzAuthors podcast. You tell us about it.
Sure. Our podcast exists to help to promote the work of our authors and to see that caregivers are able to find the work that might have meaning to them on their dementia journey. So I interview the authors and we talk about their dementia story and their book, why they wrote their book. I mean, we get into a lot of deep stuff. So it's really kind of very interesting, I think, obviously. But we started that back in November 2020 because we realized that although all of us are big readers, and when we have a problem, we go to a book for solutions, right. But not everybody does that. And the average American reads about 12 books a year, so that's not too much. And we decided another way to try to get this information out to these busy, harried caregivers is through the podcast, because that way they can listen to the author and hear the story and their tips and guidance and inspiration or whatever they're looking for. And you can do something else while you're listening, right. As you know. You can drive, you can wash dishes, you can do laundry, make supper, whatever you need to do, take a walk. But you can also listen at the same time. And, reading a book is hard because you have to stop whatever you're doing. You can't use your hands because you're holding the book. Right. And you have to focus on it. And you can't, multitask when you're reading a book. It's just not possible. So it turned out to be like a really big hit because we have many, many, many downloads every week, every month, whatever. And then we also are on several other networks as well. So we're on the UK Health Radio Network. We're on the Health Podcast Network. We're on the New York City Podcast Network, the Whole Care Network, which is that's our home base, the Whole Care Network, which is huge. And they're the ones, actually, the creator of that, Chris McClellan, is the one who convinced me to go into podcasting, because at first I didn't want anything to do with it.
They take a lot of time.
Intimidated.
They do take a lot of time, but people, as you said, people do listen. And, this topic is something that is hard for people to deal with. Especially if they have someone that's going through it right now. But it's also something that is a very important topic to deal with. And we're going to continue that conversation in the second half of today's podcast. Remember, if you do have an inspirational story, be sure and write me at office@ustreamit.net, and we'll get you on as we did Marianne. We'll be back in just a minute with the second half of the podcast.
Attention podcasters, influencers, media personalities, content creators, and aspiring or existing radio personalities. KRRB Revelation Radio now offers the opportunity to broadcast or syndicate both new or existing shows to all 50 states and more than 160 countries around the world. And if you currently operate a radio station, we offer you the opportunity to add several popular shows in virtually every genre for broadcast on your station. Choose programming from 30 minutes to 2 hours, with each internationally syndicated show adding quality content sure to grow your listening audience. We even have excellent optional services to help you promote your show or station. These services are not only designed for audio use on the radio, but also include tools for use on social media, even YouTube. For more information, visit www.revelationradio.net or email the Ustreamit LLC Broadcast Network at office@ustreamit.net today.
And I want to welcome everybody back to It's Prime Time Somewhere. And my guest again today is Marianne Sciucco. And we are discussing Alzheimer's. And there's a lot to discuss here. Marianne does have a website. I hope everybody will visit. That is AlzAuthors.com. That's AlzAuthors.com. She also has a book that I feel like people are going to be very, very interested in, and that is entitled Blue, and I'm going to let you say it, Marianne. I still can't, okay? I'll let you give your book title. How's that?
Sure. It's Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's love story.
Okay, I'm going to ask about that one more time because, like I said, that's the first time I've ever heard that word. And you said it's a really popular flower. Where's it a real popular flower at? Because in Texas, I've never heard of the silly thing. Is this something in the north or what?
Well, it's on the coast. It thrives.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
thrives it's on Cape Cod, which is where my book takes place.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know if they have it in Galveston or not. That's about the closest Gulf.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, cool name, but I can't pronounce it, so we'll just leave it at that. Now, she also is the host, or at least one of them. We really hadn't discussed that yet as to how many hosts that this podcast has, but also has a podcast about once every 2 weeks, Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia, and that is an AlzAuthors podcast, and you can find that at www.alzauthors.com/podcast. And we really didn't talk too much about your podcast yet, and I want to do that real quick. Are you the sole host on that podcast, or do others step in?
No, I am the host and the producer.
Yeah, well, I can relate.
Yeah, I do
I can relate. Yeah, and it's always something. I don't know about you, but I prefer not to know a heck of a lot about the person I'm talking with until I actually get them on, because I feel like if I know too much, then believe it or not, I'm going to forget to ask important questions. I'm going to go over. I'm going to skip over that. So I just like to talk to people. Is that kind of how you handle it, or do you have a set format?
Yeah, I have some familiarity with the authors that are my guests because they're part of my organization, but there are the authors that I know better because I'm the one who brought them in and invited them and read the book.
Oh, okay.
I don't read every book. I can't.
Right.
Somebody else has read that book because all of the books are vetted 100%. The whole book is read by whoever is working with that author, and decisions are made. We only accept about 60% of the books that come our way. So we have very stringent criteria for inclusion. So
That's good.
I don't always read the book, and I don't want the interview to be like a book review. I'm not there to dissect the book with the author. We talk about the book and things like that, but I'm there for their story because our whole premise is the value of storytelling in caregiving, and mainly telling our stories, sharing our stories to reduce the silence and stigma that often accompanies a dementia diagnosis.
Yeah. Well, I had an uncle not too long ago. I just happened to remember this. One of my favorite uncles, actually, and lives quite some distance away. The last time I saw him, I didn't really understand what his medical condition was, but it turned out it was Alzheimer's. But he hadn't gone too far down the path yet, and still knew who I was, for instance. And but he would wander out of his house and out into the street, sit on the curb, and do things like that. To the point that they had to put him into a facility. He would make frequent trips to the nurse's station, something you're familiar with, and climb over the counter at night and go out back in behind and try to arrange their work and that kind of thing. He was trying to make himself useful. All these stories came out after the fact, after he was gone. So dealing with these Alzheimer's patients is not an easy task. It's not something that every nurse is comfortable with, right?
That's correct.
How is there special training that goes into that, or how does somebody go from and I hate to use the word just a registered nurse because I know the work that goes into becoming a registered nurse, but how does someone go from becoming a registered nurse to becoming a specialist in the Alzheimer's field of nursing?
Well, there is training when you go through your nursing program on working with patients that have cognitive impairment.
Okay.
But at the time when I did it, there wasn't really. I learned a lot of it on the job. Okay. So, and at that time, a lot of the philosophy philosophies are different than they are now. I think they've evolved a lot. So people are given better skills in how to handle patients who have dementia.
Was everyone comfortable, and I'm speaking of nurses, was everyone comfortable working with Alzheimer's patients, or were there some that said, you handle that, I'm not ready for that, or whatever?
Well, I mean, it depends on where you are. Like in a hospital setting, you have to remember that the patients who are there are sick, all of them, for one reason or another, may have had surgery, there's a lot going on, and you have your assignment, may have 8 patients or 10 or 12 or however many you're responsible for. So when you're dealing with somebody with cognitive impairment, that throws a whole new set of circumstances into your situation, because now you have to deal with their behaviors, and they may not be compliant. They may not understand what's going on. They have a brain disease. You can't treat them like you would anybody else, because you can't explain things to them and know that they're going to understand, and they're just going to follow along. So there would be, a lot of frustrations involved, because you're trying to keep up with your tasks and take care of everyone all at once. But then you have this one person that's constantly calling you into the room, or wandering, or doing other things I don't even want to get into, because they're distasteful. Interrupting your day, making your day more challenging. So people don't always, don't work well with that. And their first solution is just to medicate. I'll put this person, I'll give them a sedative so that they'll behave, and then that opens up a whole new set of problems for the next person on the next shift to deal with. But I tried not to do that.
Well, one thing, I'm trying to figure out exactly how to ask this question. Let's say somebody has got this disease. It's a horrible disease. Alzheimer's is just an awful thing. And you go in as a nurse and you introduce yourself to your new patient that's just arrived on your floor or whatever. You introduce yourself and you get acquainted, and you're talking back and forth. And the next day you walk in there and they look at you dumbfounded because they have no idea who you are, and you go through it again, the whole introduction. Is that something that carries on every single day, that you've got to go in and reintroduce yourself and go through the same thing, like Groundhog's Day? I mean, I hate to say it like that, but you know what I mean. Is that normal? Is that something that you just have to do?
Yeah, and don't just do it every day. You might be doing it every hour.
Wow. Okay.
So every time you approach that person, they may not remember that they're in the hospital. They may not remember who you are. They may not be verbal. They may not speak at all. The person's abilities are going to be different, like in every case. Sometimes you have patients that are in bed, they don't get out of bed, so they're actually a little easier to care for. Other times you have people that are fully ambulatory and they're wandering all over the place. They can walk out the door. Right. And they do.
You're not talking about walking out the door of their hospital room. You're talking about walking out the hospital, right?
Yes. Walked in, disappearing, and all of a sudden you realize, where's Mr. Jones? That he's not in his room anymore, and you have to call the alert.
Wow. And how do you deal with that? I mean, I know in my uncle's case, they had a door or whatever that it was almost impossible to open.
Right, locked unit.
Whatever. Yeah. But is that something new also, or was that present all through with people trying to walk out?
Oh, yeah. A lot of units would be locked. Okay. So residents can't get out, can't escape.
Yeah.
For their own good, for their own safety.
Yeah.
And then, in a hospital floor, that's not the case at all. Everything is open because you've got all kinds of people coming in and out. So the nurse has to be really aware of, where is my patient? And if a lot of times you would sit them out, by the nurse's station in a wheelchair or a chair to be comfortable, so that everybody can keep an eye on them, because you don't want them to abscond, because you're responsible for them. Yeah. But I've seen, I've had to go after people who managed to get out of the building.
Chase them down. Yeah. Well, That doesn't sound like a fun thing at all to me at all.
No, it's very scary. It's
I
anxiety
bet.
producing.
Yeah, especially if they don't know who you are and you're chasing them. That can really be
Well, that
a
scares
challenge.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'll be
that
a
scares
major.
them. They don't know.
Yeah, a major challenge there for sure. So, tell me a little bit more about your podcast now. As far as the authors that you have, is it exclusively for people that have written books, or is it with other aspects of caregiving for this particular disease?
No, it is exclusively for the authors who are in our collection.
Okay.
So I get approached a lot by authors of books wanting to be on the podcast. And I say, well, you need to apply to be in the collection. And if, we accept you, then you'll get a podcast. But a lot of those people don't often follow through because they realize it's going to be work. But
Right.
we're a community and we support each other. And that's the goal, is to have like a clearinghouse for caregivers to go to when they're looking for supports, when they're looking for information and resources, to know that the books have all been vetted not only by authors but by people who have cared for a loved one with dementia, so they know what they're looking for. And I lost my train of thought.
Oh, well, let me just
All
jump
the
in.
books are vetted, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that is the most important thing, because you want to make sure that you're providing people with the correct information. And that kind of leads me into helpful websites that you have here on your website. And I'm just going through this here real quick, and you got several. you got quite a bit going on here. Living with dementia sites and caring for family, caregiver guides are listed here. And there's just a whole lot of organizations that are listed here on that page as well. How long have you had this website, and how hard was it for you to put everything together?
We started in 2016. We did a WordPress website, and it was just the three of us, and we had very limited skills. And eventually one of our authors, who was a graphic artist and has a career in marketing and wrote a children's book based on her experience caring for her mom, Catherine Harrison, she wanted to work with us. She volunteered her talent and time to us.
Okay.
And she's the creative genius behind that beautiful website. We wouldn't have it if it wasn't for her. Yeah. And so we wanted to create a soft landing place for caregivers, a place where they could come in and, we don't have any advertising on it. We're not yet anyway. And we have soft artwork, and we try to make it easy for people to find what they were looking for. And it just grew and grew and grew. We started out with the bookstore. That was one of the most important things. We had the blog, and then we had so many books that we had to make it easy for people to find something, because otherwise you're just looking at all these books and you don't know what's what. So she really worked hard putting that together. And then we moved on to all these other pages that you see, the resources. Those people are in organizations that we work with, we're partnered with one way or another. Some of them are organizations that are by the authors, that the authors run themselves. Some of them are more well-known than others. And we feature a lot of other podcasts. A lot of the authors in the organization have their own podcast. So we put them up there. We have podcasts. Some of the authors they didn't write a book. They had a podcast.
Okay.
We also feature film. We have a couple of filmmakers there. And people with websites, dementia websites and blogs of their own. So we try to, it's a lot of different types of resources.
Oh, you've got a ton of resources here. And one that jumped out at me, and I think needs its own special attention here, are children's books and teen fiction. Now, it says that these are picture books and young adult novels to keep children and teens, or to help children and teens to learn about Alzheimer's and dementia. That, I think, is extremely important. I told you a story before we got going of my wife in her childhood went in to see a granddad who didn't recognize her anymore, and how traumatic that was. So, kids need to know about this stuff. And we've actually
Right.
pre-warned our grandkids. If we ever say we don't know you, it's because of something like this. I don't know if that does any good or not, but that comes from her experience. But the children's books, teen fiction, that's a pretty big area right there. I'll let you detail whatever you want to about that.
Sure. As you said, if a family member has an Alzheimer's dementia diagnosis, and it affects every member of the family, including children, whether
Right.
it could even be their parent, because there's a lot of people with young onset Alzheimer's, maybe as young as 40 years old. So they may be raising children themselves, and grandparents as well. And so, you have different situations going on. A child, they could have their grandparent living in their home with them.
Right.
And so they're seeing everything up close of what's going on with them. And the children can actually be a help, a source of support in the home, caring for someone. Or they could have a parent, their loved one in a nursing facility. And so then when that situation, what happens is that the parents are usually involved in that. And so now they're not always available to the children because they have to attend to their parent that may be in a nursing home, or even may still be living on their own in their own home, and having to go over there every day and check on them. So then when they're doing that, they may not be available to their child. So children really need to understand what's going on with the family dynamic when you have a loved one with
Right.
dementia.
Right. Now, you've got something on here called Custom Caregiver Collections. Tell us about that.
That's our newest initiative. So when we started this, mainly we were focused on everything being online. So we pushed the Kindle books, the electronic books mainly. So after a while, we kind of thought, sometimes people, they like to have a real book in their hand and something they can hold to and thumb through and carry with them. So we also knew that people were starving for information and didn't always have time to go look for it on their own. So we thought, wouldn't it be great if when you went into a memory care unit, you found a collection of books on a bookshelf that you could take, that you could browse through or read while you were there. And they become catalysts for conversation amongst caregivers and other people. So we said, well, let's see if we can put together some of these collections. And we had one of the authors made a generous donation to finance 10 of them. So we created 10 of them. They all come with a handmade specialty bookshelf with our logo on it. Yeah. And then we can fit anywhere from 12 to 15 titles, depending on the books. And we stocked them, and they were delivered to a bunch of nursing facilities. And I had one, I sent it to a support group, an Alzheimer's Association support group that was based at a temple in my town. I brought it over there to them. And there was another school of I think nursing assistants, school for medical techs or something, not nurses, but the next level, to educate them. And there was a home care agency in Michigan who has one, and just a bunch of different places. And I think you can see all the photographs on the website.
Oh, yeah. I'm scrolling through them. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And one thing that I noticed also is that they have engraved, I don't know what you call it, little thing. It's
signage. You can make you can purchase one in memory of a loved one and donate it to wherever they were. If you were happy with the care they received at their memory care, or if they were active at the support group, or in a memory cafe, or other things that are going on. A nursing school, a place that you feel could benefit from having these books available. Yeah. And the funny thing was, and I experienced it, when I delivered the bookshelf, the people who received it were in awe that there were so many books available. And there was only 15 of them. I'm I have over 300 books. Yeah,
I was just going to say, it says with more than 300 quality, carefully vetted, and that's an important statement right there. 300 quality, carefully vetted books. These are personal dementia experiences. I mean, it's just incredible. So people have a lot of information here, a lot of great resources that you've listed on the site, and you also have your shop. And I think that everybody needs a shop on the web on the web these days. But you can also support the organization through the purchase of those items as well, I assume, right?
Oh yeah.
And those help. Trust me. Anytime you can do that, it really helps. Okay, I want to once again put the book back up on screen, and I want to give you the opportunity to talk about it just a little bit more. And I'm still not going to try that word. I forget it by the time we get to it every time. But I'll let you reintroduce your book title and
Sure.
where it can be purchased, and tell us a little bit more about it.
Okay, the book is called Blue Hydrangeas, and I named it that because of those beautiful flowers that are all over Cape Cod, and they have their own unique shade of blue that is due to the I think it's the alkalinity in the soil there. Because I try to grow hydrangeas at my house in New York, and it's hard to turn them blue. They want to be purple. But anyway, I always, when we visited there a lot, I used to live in that area, so I always loved seeing those. And when I was thinking about the book and I deciding to make these characters be owners of a bed and breakfast, I had to come up with a name for the bed and breakfast. So I was, working out all these possible names, and then it just dawned on me, why don't I just call it Blue Hydrangeas, because the hydrangeas are everywhere, and so these people actually have hydrangeas on both sides of their drive leading up to their house.
Oh, wow.
So they become a big part of the story, and she's an artist, and she's the one who has Alzheimer's, the wife, but she was a commercial artist, and she was known for her watercolors of the hydrangeas, and she would draw them for book publishers and greeting card companies, or whoever, but she always had plenty of the blue hydrangeas in all of her work. So it became a big part of the story. And there are some other little parts using blue hydrangeas that are really very pretty too. So that really figured a lot in that. And it's available on Amazon and all the big booksellers.
And through your website as well, right?
And through the website,
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And then also a little bit more about your podcast, because we sure want people to tune into that as well.
So the podcast, one of the things I did when I first started with the podcast, I said, I want to make sure that the first people I interview are the people in our organization who actually have dementia. Because I wanted to make sure I got them, and I got them to tell their story while they still could.
Right.
And so you'll find that and a lot of people there. The very first one was with Wendy Mitchell, who's from the United Kingdom, and she is like the ambassador for Alzheimer's and early onset Alzheimer's. Really, globally, everybody knows who she is. So that was very exciting to finally speak with her.
Well, I know that it's just an incredible work that you're doing. And I really appreciate the fact that you have been on with me today. And I encourage everyone to make sure that they stop by. And that's AlzAuthors.com. That's AlzAuthors.com. And again, check out all that is offered with the AlzAuthors.com website. Lots of information there. And Marianne, I really appreciate the fact that you were on the podcast today here with It's Primetime Somewhere. Remember, people, if you have got an informative story that you would like to share, we would sure love to have you here on It's Primetime Somewhere. Until next time, everyone, thanks again for joining us today. God bless you.